Hi guys. So today we're going to talk about viruses. This is part of chapter 10, and usually people wait until they've learned about DNA, replication, transcription, and translation, which is basically how proteins are made, to talk about viruses because viruses are made of proteins and either DNA or RNA. But um, because of the current situation, we're just going to go ahead and do it now. So let's start. Hello? Oh, there we go. All right, so first, some basic vocabulary. A pathogen is a disease causing agent. It could be a fungus, it could be a parasite, it could be a virus or a bacterium, just anything that causes disease. Go ahead and watch this video, Flu Attack: How a Virus Invades Your Body, and then come back and we'll go on to the next slide. All right, so first of all, this is not the first coronavirus. There are already a lot of coronaviruses that exist in animals in the wild, naturally. And when a new coronavirus appears in humans, we can be pretty sure that it came from a human animal interaction of some sort. There's different strains of coronavirus. They cause the common cold, caused SARS in 2002, which is actually more deadly than the current virus. But the current virus, COVID-19, is spread far more quickly. Also, MERS, which is Middle East Respiratory System, that broke out in 2012. A lot of what we know about the current virus comes from previous research about these other coronaviruses. And the existence of this particular coronavirus was undiscovered. Nobody knew about it until the outbreak in December. So, here's what we know. The virus itself is called SARS-CoV-2, and the disease is COVID-19. Um, it's really easy to refer to the virus as COVID-19, and I will probably do that on accident at some point, but I just really want you to know that this is actually how things are. SARS-CoV-2 is the virus, and COVID-19 is the disease. Over here, this information is from March 16th, and it is now March 17th. And so probably these numbers are lower than they, probably these numbers displayed here are lower than the actual numbers. But there's 179,165 confirmed cases and 7,081 total deaths. And that's not even counting the people who haven't been tested. Like, I mean, I don't know personally anybody who's been tested for coronavirus. There's a lot of people who aren't being tested who might have it. Okay. The World Health Organization, that is the sort of the infection control organization of the world. It's like a global organization. They say that approximately 3.4% of the affected individuals will die. That does not mean that 3.4% of everybody in the world is going to die, just the infected people. And that's just their estimate. And that is going to vary by region. For example, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, which is America's health organization, uh, estimates that approximately 0.25% to 1% of those infected will die, which is a lot lower comparatively. This is just a nice little map for you to look at. Again, I got this yesterday on the 16th, and it's now the 17th, so I'm sure that these numbers are much higher now. But it's just interesting to look at where the most deaths are. China clearly is the highest. So, where did it come from? Well, it was first seen in Wuhan, China in December, and the virus was unknown before this time. They noticed it as several unusual pneumonia cases, and they did some DNA analysis and figured out that it's a new virus. They called it Severe Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, and it originated in bats. They figured this out by comparing the genes of this new virus to those of previously discovered coronaviruses. And so they discovered that it almost certainly came from a bat. It didn't go directly from the bat to the human. It probably went into a pangolin first and then a human. Pangolins are endangered mammals. They are absolutely adorable, and they are used as food a lot in Asia, especially in China, even though they're endangered, which, It's causing their populations to dwindle even further, and supposedly their scales have some kind of strange medicinal quality to them. I don't know, but this guy probably ate a bat that had the virus and then was caught and went to this horrible place, um, a wet market. We'll get into that in a minute. But bats aren't sold at the market where the virus was first transmitted. So that's why scientists think that it was carried by a pangolin. The virus was carried by a pangolin. Bats and pangolins are vectors, which are animals that transmit the virus. That means they carry the virus from one victim to another. And vectors for other diseases include mosquitoes, those guys vector the dengue virus, livestock, birds, avian flu, all kinds of things can be vectors. So here's how new human viruses emerge. Well, most viruses exist in animals before making the jump to humans. The coronaviruses, especially, are already capable of infecting human cells. That others need to mutate a little bit to be compatible with human cells. The transfer usually happens when people either interact with an infected animal in a certain way or usually consume it or handle raw meat from it. SARS virus came from civet cats, which is a kind of cat. The MERS virus probably came from dromedary camels. HIV, which is not a coronavirus, but that came from chimpanzees. So, where did this coronavirus, come from? Go ahead and watch this video, Why New Diseases Keep Appearing in China. A lot of new viruses arise in China. And this video it's difficult to watch because it paints a very um, vivid picture of what happens at these wet markets where things like where the new viruses come about, honestly. So you don't have to watch it. I encourage you to, because hiding, not knowing the truth never helped anybody. But if you decide not to, that's fine. Basically, a wet market is a place where people come and they bring their livestock and their wild animals that they've quote unquote farmed, like snakes and pangolins, which are freaking endangered, and all kinds of things that really just shouldn't be eaten. And they bring them to this market and they put them in cages and they just stack the cages up, and the ones at the bottom are just swimming in all sorts of liquid because all the pus and the droppings and everything from the ones on top are just dropping down to the bottom. They're just completely infested with disease, and then people will come to these markets and they will pick out an animal and it will be slaughtered right there in front of them, and they'll take it home. So yeah, a lot of viruses can be transferred that way. All right. So here's what the COVID-19 virus actually does. 80% of infected individuals are going to recover naturally on their own, no doctor necessary. Early symptoms include cough, fever, sometimes diarrhea. It enters the body through the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. Sometimes it goes directly to the lungs if it's inhaled, but it goes back to the back of the nasal passage, and then it attaches to the mucous membrane in the throat. Um, then it goes down into the lungs. It causes inflammation, it damages cells, and it impedes gas exchange, which means that it just makes it more difficult for oxygen to get into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide to get out. So your blood starts, building up with carbon dioxide, can't get that out, can't get oxygen in, becomes more difficult to do anything because you freaking can't breathe. And then the air sacs fill with pus and dead cells. And so at this point, you've got pneumonia. Um, Sometimes, if you don't see a doctor or anything, you could drown in your own pus. That would be nasty. Um, this may also spread to other organs, kidney, liver, etc. So at that point, you've got a systemic infection, which is even worse than, oh my God, have I really? Oh, God. All right, sorry about that. Still figuring out how this program works. Come on. All right. Every single virus has a nucleic acid core, DNA or RNA, and a protein coat. The protein coat is called a capsid. They're called infectious particles. They're not alive. Sometimes they're called phages or virions, and a virion is basically the complete infectious form of a virus once it's outside of the host cell. They're not made of cells. They lack cellular structure, which means they don't have any kind of organelles or anything, which remember is one of the characteristics of life is having cellular organization. They're extremely small, much, much smaller than any cell. They have to infect a cell to reproduce, and this is another reason they're not alive. So when people talk about killing a virus, what they really mean is inactivating it. It's not alive because it can't do anything on its own. So remember the seven characteristics of life again: metabolism, reproduction, growth, maintaining homeostasis. Virus can't do any of that. It has to use the host cell's machinery to replicate itself, that is, to make and assemble more viruses exactly like itself, because it doesn't have the necessary proteins to do this, which is why it has to hijack those of a cell. A host cell is whatever cell is infected by the virus, and the host range is the range and type of cells and species that a virus is able to infect. That's all cell types and cells in different species. They're all different. Not all viruses can infect every cell. And this is why a flu virus mainly affects your respiratory system and the cells in that system instead of, say, your spleen or something like that. Or I had a cat once who had the feline equivalent of HIV, which was FIV, but it wouldn't transfer to humans because it wasn't compatible with human cells. Change in host range can occur through virus mutation. This is how many viruses jump from animals to humans. Due to a very small number of genes, any change in mutation in the genetic material has a really great chance of having a large effect overall. Coronaviruses mutate extremely quickly, causing difficulty in creating an effective vaccine. So, here's the viral structure. Viruses are extremely diverse. They come in all shapes and sizes, infect all different kinds of cells. Not all viruses are shaped like this one. This is just sort of a general example for you to look at. So first we've got the nucleic acid core. All viruses have nucleic acid. It's either DNA or RNA. And this is the information for making new viruses. It can be either single-stranded, which means one strand, or double-stranded. Each of these little twisty backbone thingies is called strand, and you can see that this one has two, so this virus has double-stranded. Next is a capsid. The individual units are capsomeres. Remember that all viruses have a capsid. It's the protective protein coat surrounding the nucleic acid. It can be many, many different shapes. We've got the surface antigens, sometimes they're called spikes. They are glycoproteins, and a glycoprotein is a hybrid of a carbohydrate and a protein. This is how viruses get into the cell. Sometimes they have an envelope. If there's no envelope, the surface antigens just stick to the capsid. Capsomeres determine the viral shape. This is shape again. So the shape of the capsomeres determines how they fit together, and then that in turn is going to make up a virus of a specific shape. And you see them using the word nucleocapsid here, which basically just means nucleic acid plus capsid, which is what a virus is. The envelope, it comes from a cellular membrane of some sort, and it depends on, well, so if there is an envelope, where it comes from in the cell depends on where in the cell the virus replicates. Sometimes the virus will get its membrane from pieces of the host cell membrane, the external membrane, and they'll do this through exocytosis. So you can see in this picture, this is the virus capsid with the nucleic acid inside, and these are viral glycoproteins, and they're on the surface of the cell. And so the virus just goes in and exocytoses out, and there's its little envelope. Sometimes this can protect the virus from the host immune system if it also carries with it some antigens that are native to the host cell.